we are talking about one of my favorite topics today, and that is the topic of boundaries. Today, and in this video, we are going to talk about why you don't have boundaries, how it's ruining your life, and what you can do to build up boundaries and then regain control of your life. Now, in order to even understand or even get to this conversation, we need to understand what boundaries are. So, very simply, boundaries are the limits that you put on others as to what is acceptable and what is not acceptable or unacceptable. So, the limits you put on others as to what is acceptable and not acceptable or unacceptable. Now, I always say boundaries are not about what the other person is going to do. It's about what you're going to do. So with a boundary, say the boundary is lateness, when people are late. My boundary is if you are late, I leave, I move on. I don't wait for people unless I've communicated or they've communicated with me that they'll be late and how long they'll be late. Again, this is not if this is a pattern, that's a whole other discussion. But if it's a one-time lateness kind of thing, and I give people, a 5-minute grace period, and then they don't show up and they haven't communicated, after 5 minutes, I leave. That is my boundary. And that is the outcome. You crossed the boundary, you were late, you didn't communicate with me. Therefore, the outcome of that is me leaving. So boundaries, again, are not about what the other person's really going to do. It's more about what you're going to do. Now, to understand what boundaries or having no boundaries looks like in your life, because again, if we've lived in chaotic families, if there was illness in our system, if we are parentified children, which I'm going to touch on a little bit later in this video, then we may not understand what boundaries are or what it even looks like in our lives. And maybe some of us do. Maybe you came across this video because you know you need boundaries. Great, welcome. Whoever is here, welcome all of you. So I like to use the acronym VOID, V-O-I-D. Void, the V in void is vanishing. When we don't have boundaries, we tend to hide. We tend to not take up space. And then people don't consider us because we're not being authentic. We're not stating our needs. We're not showing up full as who we are. We vanish. We I don't know if you know that Homer Simpson meme where there's this green kind of grassy wall hedge behind him and you just see him recede into the wall. I don't know if I can put it up here, but he just kind of recedes into the wall and he just vanishes. He disappears. So we do that too. We do that emotionally and physically. So vanishing is the first letter of void. Second is O, obligation. So many times we feel like we should do things. And I talked about shoulding all over ourselves in my video called Nice versus Kind. So should. When we believe we should do something out of obligation, the energy of that act changes. So there's this teacher named Sadhguru, and he wrote a book called Karma. And he talked about how karma is not actually the action of what you're doing and how it builds up karma. It's the energy behind it. So if there is some sort of obligation or fear or some sort of anxiety about not doing something for somebody, then that is what really creates and builds up the karma. It's not the act itself, it's what's behind the act. So in void, O is obligation. And now I is our inauthenticity. Our inability, as I said before, to show up as our full true selves. To know things about ourselves or things that are boundary crossing to us and not saying anything about them or not sharing those things. It's being nice. You're being nice, you're being dishonest, but it's inauthentic. You're not showing up as you. So that was I, and then D, dishonor. It's very close to inauthenticity. When things happen that you know are wrong for you, which are a boundary crossing, something serious has happened, you dishonor yourself by not saying anything. Or you go along with things even though they're fully out of integrity for you. So void, vanishing, obligation, inauthenticity, and dishonoring. Those are the ways that many times the lack of boundaries shows up in our lives. What is the impact of not having boundaries? Maybe some of you are feeling it right now. The first thing that I thought of was exhaustion, being just straight up tired all the time. You're constantly running from here to there, trying to do all the things for everybody, being everything to everybody, because you really are desperately in the need to be liked and loved. And so you have no boundaries. You're constantly in everybody's business, trying to solve all the problems of the world, not saying no to anything. And you're just exhausted and depleted. I think that's the main one. The second issue I would say is that you have no time to do the things that you truly want to do, again, because you're constantly running around doing all the things for other people. That's also a problem. And what's an issue that I think is even more larger in scope is your inability to create intimate relationships with people. Because again, you're not showing up as you. You're showing up as a version of the person that you think that other person wants. So there is this dishonesty because you want to be liked or loved so much or cared for, where you're not going to have any boundaries because you don't want to say no to that person because you want them to like you or love you or take care of you. So how are you going to build intimate relationships with other people when you're not showing up as yourself and you don't have boundaries? People who really will love you and really respect you and really want to care for you will honor your boundaries and will have boundaries of their own that they will expect you to follow suit and respect. So exhaustion, I call it time poverty, when you're running around from here and there because you're out doing all the things, pretending that you have a cape and that you're a superhero. I've done it. I'm shaking my head because I've done this before. And it just, again, it back to being tired. It makes you exhausted. It depletes you. And then, of course, the inability to have actual healthy, true relationships with others. And though I'm not a doctor, I believe that not having boundaries, causes, or it is a root of anxiety, depression, which can cause other physical problems in our bodies, because there is a mind-body connection in my perspective. And if you're anxious because you're constantly hoping that people will like you, so you're running around like a mad person, or if you feel like you're not enough and that you can never live up to people's expectations for them to love you, and you have that sadness and that grief, then it's going to create physical problems as well. I wanted to bring up grief. I think it's an important topic. I'm going to make some videos about grief. I was trained by Francis Weller. He is a psychotherapist who specializes in grief and loss and death. And the grief that I want to talk about here is about grief that comes from expectations not being met. So as children, we expect that we'll be cared for, that we'll be loved, that we'll be nurtured. This looks different for everyone, but there is an underlying foundational expectation that we will be cared for and loved and nurtured by primary caregivers. When you're a parentified child, when you're an overly externalized child who is taking care emotionally or even sometimes physically of a parent because of many situations, which I've mentioned here, a few, there is grief that permeates your life that you carry on into adulthood. That's the grief of that expectation of the care and the nurturance and the love not being met. And it's like this underlying, runs in the background kind of program or app in our consciousness that is, there's sadness there. And it's sometimes so difficult to even realize that it's a thing. You just sense it. It's this vague sense of sadness, and it's deep sadness, but you don't know why. It's like this form of existential sadness. Again, it's hard to really pin down what it is or where it comes from. And again, I just wanted to mention it here because this impacts us psychologically and physically. Anxiety, depression, that sadness has to go somewhere. So of course, it ends up coming out in our bodies. It comes out in the way we have relationships, interact with other people. So again, I'm going to talk about grief in and I'm going to elaborate a lot more on the gates of grief and Francis Weller's work. But I wanted to bring this in because I thought it was very important to bring in how grief is really an underpinning of not having boundaries and how it is supported. So I hope that's helpful. Now we're going to talk about, dun, 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 how we can get some boundaries, which first I want to say, can we please just take a deep breath right now? Deep breath in through the nose. Exhale out of the mouth. That was a lot about boundaries, and okay, you're still here. Fantastic. Let's talk about the juicy stuff about how to get some boundaries in our lives and regain control for once and for always. Now, if we don't accept where we are right now, no matter what condition or state we're in, we're going to have a really, really hard time building boundaries. So if we can make the agreement that we're going to welcome, not allow, welcoming and allowing are very different. So we're going to welcome who we are right now in this moment, and we're going to accept everything that brought us here. And I want you to do this exercise to help to pinpoint places that you're not accepting yourself, places where you're not welcoming yourself. This is from Authentic Relating. So we're going to take a piece of paper and we're going to write all the things that we maybe don't accept about ourselves, as many as you can think of, things that we do not accept on one side of this piece of paper. Just free flow it, don't judge it, just write the things that you don't accept about yourself. Draw a line, and on the next side of the paper, I want you to find a way to reframe that. I'll give you an example. I can't accept that I'm an angry person. Okay, so you can't accept that you're an angry person, or you identify yourself as an angry person. That's a story. So now we're going to change the story a little bit. On the other side, we're not going to be like, I accept that I'm an angry person. We're not going to do it. Every time you say anything after the words I am is an invitation for that thing to manifest in the 3D world. So we're not even going to use I am an angry person. We're going to strike that from our vocabulary, our lexicon. Instead of I accept that I'm an angry person, we're going to say, even though there's issues of anger here, I accept myself exactly as I am. So we're acknowledging that there's issues of anger, but we're not identifying ourselves with the anger, saying that we are an angry person. That's a curse. You're basically cursing yourself. Like in my Nice and Kind video, we are casting spells constantly on ourselves with what we say. So even though there are anger issues, I accept myself exactly as I am. This is also some prompting that you can find in the Emotional Freedom Technique, or EFT. So we have accepted ourselves and we've welcomed ourselves. You did that exercise where you wrote on one side of the paper all the things you feel like you can't maybe accept about yourself, and then you reframed them on the other side. I really also want us to take responsibility for the place that we're in right now. So many times I hear with clients and friends, I just can't help it. I'm an empath. I absorb everyone's energy. No, Susie, it's not that you're an empath. It's that you have no boundaries and you're absorbing everybody else's energy. Take responsibility. The world is not just doing things to you. People are not pushing their energy in most cases onto you unless they see an opening and you're accepting it. So we need to create boundaries and not be tossed around by everybody in the universe with their issues. Sometimes it's a they problem. It's not a you problem. I said that before in my video about Nice and Kind. Not every problem, not every situation is a you problem. There's people that need to take care of their own stuff. It's time to focus on ourselves and take responsibility for what we're actually doing. And that means I am an empath and I am learning how to create boundaries so I don't absorb everyone's energy. Not I am an empath and I can't help it, so I absorb everyone's energy. Do you see the difference? I think it's pretty clear. So let's take responsibility for what is going on in our life. But again, we're accepting everything first, we're welcoming it, and now we're taking responsibility and owning up to our part, our side of the street, so to speak. You deserve boundaries. I don't care what anybody has told you. I don't care what any parent has said to you. You deserve to be respected in your boundaries. You deserve to have them. Also, you are enough. You've always been enough, and you don't need to do anything else in order to be enough. I just wanted to make sure that I said that, and I really mean it. You know, another thing that I really want to manage expectations with is, if this took 50 years to build, or 60 years, or 20 years, or 30 years, the lack of boundaries, whatever age you are in this moment, if it took your whole life to build, it's not going to take a day to dissolve. So please be patient with yourself. If you've been like this for your whole entire life, then it's going to take time and effort and work on your part to be able to build up those boundaries and to uphold those boundaries. Because it's one thing to state a boundary, but it's also another thing to be able to come back to it and really claim it as your own and embody it. And then people get accustomed to it. So it's going to take time. So I please ask for your patience with yourself, and also patience and grace with others, because this is new to them. If you've always been the person to say yes to everything, once you start saying no to things, you've changed. It doesn't serve me anymore. And now I'm going to lash out at you. So that's something that you need to be aware of. When you start instituting boundaries, people will say you've changed, and you have changed. And people will mean it in a negative way. They will mean, you've changed. I cannot get what I want from you in the way that I've always gotten it. And now it makes me angry because I'm frustrated because I wanted my life to be convenient and easy, and you're not making my life convenient and easy. Don't be convenient and don't be easy. But it's going to take time for people to accept that. And some people will not accept it. And you need to be okay with that. If someone does not uphold your boundary, once you've stated it politely, given them the opportunity to course correct when you've told them, hey, this is a boundary crossing. If they cannot accept your boundary, it has to do with them. It does not have to do with you. Again, boundaries are not about what the other person is going to do. It's about what you're going to do. So there are now consequences to people's behavior when they cross your boundaries. Please be aware, this is not an easy process. It's very simple. It's very clear cut. I wish, there was a magic boundaries bullet or a magic boundaries pill that I could give you where you were just super strong with your boundaries. Everybody accepted them and you were on your merry way. But it's just not it. It's a work in progress. And again, you may backslide, but continue to have patience with yourself and others, and continue to state your boundaries, but also have boundaries on how long you state those boundaries. And I'll give you some examples in just a second. What are your boundaries? Good question, right? How do we find that out? Well, what are the places that are draining you? Where do you feel activated? Where do you feel triggered by other people? What situations, what places? Where are those places where you don't feel you could be your full self, or you feel maybe constricted? Those could be really good places to start looking as to what your boundaries are, and maybe you just haven't had the opportunity or time to look at what those places are to figure out, in contrast, what your boundaries are. So many times we figure out our boundaries in contrast to something that shows us, hey, this is the opposite of what I want. This is what I actually want. Okay, now I can figure out where my boundary is. For me, when I think about claiming a boundary for myself between me and another, and I get a really kind of constricted, kind of icky feeling, anxious feeling almost about their reaction, that's where I know I need to do some work. If I'm anxious about how someone else is going to respond by me instituting a boundary, definitely something that I should look at. There is some sort of weird codependence, maybe reminds me of a parent situation, something deeper is going on there. that's a great place to see where I can be confident in my boundary, how I can do that. And now we're going to talk about things to say and how to say them with people so you can institute and clearly communicate your boundaries. And we're going to do this clearly. This is going to be fast and quick, or fast and quick. And we're going to figure out exactly what you can say. You need some scripts. And I have a PDF that you can get. It's free on my website. You can get this PDF, and it's this boundaries scripting that I created from this video. So please enjoy it and go to my website, themariasofia.com. You can also find it in my about. Get the PDF and get that scripting so that you have at hand really quick things that you can say to people when you're instituting some boundaries. So let's talk about that scripting. Lateness. There is this thing called Greek time. And you could be late in Greek time between 5 minutes and 5 years. It could be any time in between. It doesn't matter. 5 million years. An eon. It doesn't matter. Greek time is crazy. And I'm sure in other cultures this also exists. Anytime. So the lateness, the chronic lateness, which is straight up passive. It's being passive aggressive, everyone. Let's call it what it is. If you are late consistently, I understand that emergencies happen and people are late once in a blue moon, but I'm talking about consistent, chronic lateness that is being passive aggressive. My time is more important than your time. Therefore, I'm going to take my sweet time and I'll get there when I'll get there, and you're going to be there waiting on me because my time is more important than your time. So this is what I do. If a person is late, after the 5-minute grace period, you leave. I know it sounds really harsh. And when that person says, this is if they haven't communicated to you that they're late. So say if I'm running late to an appointment and I call that person, hey, I'm going to be late 5 minutes because there's traffic on the 405 freeway, which happens all the time. That's one thing. Or there was an accident or something happened. That is one thing. Then you don't leave. But if you're waiting 5 minutes, the person hasn't communicated to you, then be out. Be out, be gone, leave. If that person gets upset, say you were late, I had other things to do, we need to reschedule. Again, you don't have to say it in a mean way. You could be just very honest. I had other things to do and I don't have time to wait. Also, if you have a person who is consistently late and then they try to make plans with you, be honest and say, you're chronically late and I feel very disrespected when you're late. And I don't want to make plans with you because you're not reliable. And I need friends that are reliable. Just be very honest. But the chronic lateness, those are people that have their own issues and it's not your job to resolve them. You wasting your time waiting on people that will show up an hour late. Why are these people in your life? And if they're family, stop inviting them to things. I know it's very harsh and I didn't say this was going to be easy, but these are energy vampires. They're depleting your energy. They're creating holes in your energy because you're waiting on somebody, hoping that they'll come. And then they're an hour late, or they don't even show up, or they don't RSVP, or they RSVP, yes, and they don't show up. This has got to stop. Boundaries need to be instituted in order for you to regain just a sense of control over your own life, your own time, which is the most valuable and precious thing you have is your time. So don't let people waste your time. If someone's not late and they didn't communicate why and what's going on, be out. If they want to make plans with you again, these chronic lateness people, tell them that you need reliable people in your life and you don't want to create plans with them because they're constantly late and you have things to do. So if they can commit to being on time, great. But if they commit to being on time and then they're late again, then it's time to look at that friendship or that relationship and see if it's really serving you and how you can end it gracefully. Again, this isn't easy, but it's very simple. I learned this magical scripting point in authentic relating, and I have to share it with you. This is so good, especially when you have really nosy family members that want to be all up in your business 24/7. not like I have experience in that, but I have a lot of experience in that, being a Greek person. So here is the magical scripting point. I really appreciate your curiosity on knowing how much I weigh, but that's not something I really want to talk about. I'm not comfortable with it, or it's kind of boring. You can say this about anything. I'm really appreciative of your curiosity about my love life, Thea Eleni, but I really don't want to talk about it. It's so boring. That's it. I appreciate your curiosity. I don't feel comfortable talking about it. It's boring, or I don't want to talk about it. So simple, so clear. Also, the advice givers, because everybody, when you come up and you talk about maybe a concern or issue in your life, everybody has the best advice. They all become just these amazing sages all of a sudden. I really appreciate your advice, but I'm not really looking for solutions right now. I just kind of want to openly talk about what's going on. I'm not really here for solutions and advice, but thank you though. I appreciate it. Super clear, super kind. It's true. You're not looking for solutions or advice. You just want to air out something or just share something for support. You can even say that. Thank you so much for your advice, but I really am not here for solutions. I really am just here for support. Who can argue with that? Some people can, but it's a great way to nip the bud of those people who want to give you solutions. A lot of times those people are men, but sometimes they're women too, because we love to give advice. Do you have that friend, we'll call her Kelly, that calls you at all hours of the day and night with every possible, what she thinks is an emergency, a crisis, and it really is an emergency or crisis, and you're up all night, like trying to unravel the mysteries of the universe with some guy she's dating, the 20th guy that she's dating that she fell in love with, and all the things in the last 5 minutes? Yeah. Do not disturb, my friends. There is this thing on most phones called do not disturb. You need to have communication curfews and put yourself on do not disturb. And you can select even the contacts that can call you. Like say if you have children or family members that are elderly and you need to be in communication with them, you could put them as people that you can have communication with during your curfew, but other people that are not able to come through. Please do that. Do a do not disturb at night. Have a curfew for yourself. Don't be up all hours of the day and night trying to solve the mysteries of the universe with people who think everything is an emergency and a crisis when it isn't. And when Kelly calls you the next day and says, oh my gosh, Maria, why didn't you pick up the phone? I was calling you 25,000 times because I was really distraught about something. Yeah, I put my phone on do not disturb. I need my sleep. I need my rest. And not everything is an emergency. Poor planning is not an emergency. People also need to understand, and you can explain to them like what an emergency is. If someone's in the hospital, in jail, there was an accident, there's something, somebody's ill, that is an emergency. Not everything can be an emergency. When everything is a fire, nothing is a fire. And my last point, which you can find even more points about detoxing in terms of social media, can be found in the Digital Detox ebook that's on my website, is blocking people on social media. Sometimes social media can be the worst purveyor of no boundaries. So you can block people. You could unfriend people. You can do all kinds, unfollow people. This is kind of more of an advanced move, but I suggest that you start to unfollow people and block people that cross your boundaries. Again, the Digital Detox ebook is available on my website. It's free. All you need to do is sign up for my newsletter. My website is themariasofia.com. Please head on over there. And the Digital Detox is this whole ebook about how to declutter your digital life, especially in social media, and create boundaries, because we love boundaries over here. So thank you so much for watching. Get those free resources, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.